Hey there, my online recovery friends. Welcome back to day 2 of Reclaim Myself. We're looking at a holistic recovery workbook series. We got book 1, 2, and 3 here. Yesterday we opened up book 1 in day 1, chapter 1, talking about balancing safety and growth. In the process of growth, there's a safe pace, an organic pace, and naturally reflecting that pace in your own recovery, this workbook series is going to take some time. Recovery is going to take some time. Who are the type of people that benefit in recovery? Well, yesterday we talked about identifying our primary purpose, and pretty much anyone can benefit from a conversation about primary purpose. Today we're going to touch on pain and how pain influences our primary purpose and how pain oftentimes detracts from our primary purpose. We're going to talk about how we can do things, how we can take actions towards our primary purpose, daily small steps towards our primary purpose. I want to encourage you to pick up where we left off, right here in the workbook, page 19. It talks about, and I want to just mention, in talking about my primary purpose yesterday, I mentioned that part of my primary purpose is helping people and serving. And that's a part of my purpose. Another part of the purpose that I mentioned in the book is freedom. And yesterday I didn't mention that part of my recovery and my experience with addiction brought me to prison. And I served 10 and a half years in prison, and upon my release continued my recovery, as prison was only the beginning of my recovery, and it oftentimes detracted from my recovery. The experience of pain and trauma and the abuse at times, the emotional hurt and suffering that attributed that time of addiction and a time of prison for myself and my family and the community of people that were hurt by the incident that brought me to prison. There is a process of my own recovery that is now driven by freedom. I choose freedom in my daily life, and I try to live free from dependence and free from hurt in myself and living out of hurt. I've learned from a lot of pain. And today, as we talk about pain, I want to talk about how pain is a part of recovery. The people who benefit from recovery are people like myself who've come out of prison, or people who are coming back from war and have suffered an emotional wound, people who've suffered trauma, people who've experienced hurt and neglect, who've been missing a part of the human experience. I know for a part of myself, for years, I was wounded to a place where I had emotional walls and boundaries up. And one of the things that contributes to my purpose is coming out of those boundaries. Isolation contributes to pain. And so if isolation contributes to pain, what then contributes to my strength or contributes to my well-being is getting out of isolation and connecting with people. Yesterday I mentioned the importance in recovery of connecting with people, and I talked to somebody who's working through the Reclaim series and listening and watching right now, and he was talking about the importance of connecting with a 90-year-old mentor, a pastor of his, who was connecting to him in a way that loved him regardless of anything that he had been through, and held this space of complete safety. Having a place where you can process some of the emotional pain has led to addiction or pain is part of the process of getting out of pain. I want to talk about a few of the things that Chaim and I mentioned in this book that contribute and strengthen our primary purpose. And Chaim begins by talking about how he must be aware of how he's relating with pain, and that in many cultures there's this welcoming of unwelcome guests, that in times when we are experiencing pain, rather than trying to wish it away or want it away or push it away, welcoming it and saying, okay, right now I'm in pain, and experiencing that pain. I also mentioned in my own response in the book that my own relationship with pain is something that had brought me into addiction. It was experiencing pain and experiencing trauma that brought me into addiction, and it was dealing with that pain that's brought me out of addiction. How I relate to pain now is a process of doing what we are outlining in this book, practicing what we are asking you to look at. So being aware of how you're relating with pain. Most of us are trained in this culture in some way to escape pain. And escaping pain is the opposite of growth. If you embrace pain, you naturally grow. And so if there's pains in your life that have pushed you into addiction or brought you into dependence or are bringing you to not want to deal with the pain or the stress in your life, how can you look at healthy ways to address that pain? I was talking with someone tonight who's going through a pain that we all go through in life, but it's difficult as she's experiencing the death of a loved one. And in part of our conversation, she talked about how she's identifying part of her own fears and anxieties and worries that are associated with experiencing someone else's death. We are sometimes faced with very difficult feelings and pains that are associated with loss and grief. When I was in prison, I was surrounded by worry and fear and a river of negativity and hate. And part of overcoming and transcending and transmuting that experience was embracing it and finding ways to embrace it, even in the pain. And I want to mention that transmuting is the process of basically taking things that are opposing in force and bringing them together. So bringing pain to your experience to try to produce something different. And transcending is essentially rising above or moving above something. So as we think about transmuting and transcending in our growth process, it's a process of putting together our pain and our joys and our purpose. Dealing with difficult emotions like grief, it is necessary to find people that can help support us. This woman that I was talking to who had experienced this loss mentioned how she had called out to 4 or 5 people, including myself, who could support and help her in this grief. And that's an example of a healthy way to go through a process of grief. If you're grieving, part of it may need to be done alone, but there's a part of it that needs to be seen. And people who are hurting need to be seen and felt as if we're not alone. This book, if you're with me right now, you're not alone. If you're in pain, there's a lot of people who have helped create this book who've experienced a lot of pain and have found a way to transmute that, to embrace that, and to transcend that and find ways to become stronger and deeper in character. Patience and other character attributes are oftentimes learned in situations where we have to exercise extreme patience. When we are in pain, whatever type of pain you're in, give yourself patience. Be patient with your pain. Allow yourself to know that if it was a physical wound, we wouldn't expect it to heal immediately. We would expect that it's going to take time for a physical wound to heal. Your emotional wounds are the same way. Give yourself time for the emotional wounds to heal. Don't box yourself in. Chaim talks about that in ways we box ourselves in. And in prison, I learned that the most difficult prison to get out of was actually the prison of my own mind, of my own anxiety and worry and fear and feeling trapped. And so if you're feeling trapped, it's something as simple as going out and getting out for a walk or going on a drive. I recently went on a road trip to Mexico because road trips are a part of me where I experience freedom. Being at the ocean, I experienced the awe and the wonder of the ocean and was able to release things that I needed to release and that I was carrying. I want to touch on one of my responses. It's in the forefront of practice every day, finding time throughout the day to meditate, to be still, to be quiet. in learning the posture of meditation, not just physically but emotionally and mentally, in learning the space of meditation, you can come to a place of stillness and quiet where you can be with both pain and you can be with both joy and any of the human emotions that you're experiencing, and to just be with it and to let it be okay. Uh, Today, if you would just practice with me for a moment, just take a second to just notice your breath. The other day I was doing a exercise with a group of individuals with a biofeedback monitor where I hooked them up to a brainwave biofeedback computer program that uses an algorithm to look at the waves between the heart and the mind and the coherence that is supposed to be within our heart and mind. And as I hooked people up to this monitor, their brainwave patterns were all over the place. And I had them just for a second, and I encourage you to do this with me for a second. I had them just simply put their hand on their heart and close their eyes. And I had them just look at their breath and just focus on their breath for a second. And in that breath is as they're breathing through their heart and just bringing their attention to their breath, not trying to change their breath at all, I ask them to think of something that is brings joy to their heart, something that brings a feeling of happiness and joy to their heart. And as soon as they were able to identify something joyful and happy, their brainwave patterns changed and they became more even. And so today, I hope that you'll just take a moment to consider your primary purpose, to consider something that brings the idea of freedom. All I have to do is think of the ocean and I'm there and I feel a sense of freedom. When I meditate, oftentimes I envision myself at the ocean and just breathe with the waves of the ocean. Just allow yourself to breathe. If you're new to meditation, just simply allow yourself to breathe. Come to a place where you're seated, where you're still, or laying down and you're still, but where you're attentive and focused, and just be mindful. Be mindful of what's right in front of you, what's in your mind, what you're thinking about, but what you may not even realize that you're thinking about. So to be just conscious of the things that you're thinking about. In doing so, I want to encourage you with one of the final things that brings and contributes to and strengthens my primary purpose, and that is choosing freedom each day. And I hope that you will make a choice today to continue to choose freedom, to continue to choose ways that you can deal with your pain in a way that contributes to your freedom, that contributes to your primary purpose and doesn't detract from it, that doesn't do what addiction does and do what avoidance does and steal from the experience of pain and the experience of purpose that it accompanies your pain. Because in your pain, you're learning something. And as you learn something in your pain and as you sit with your pain, you will transmute it. You will transcend it, and it will become something that creates freedom each day for you. And that's my hope for you as I leave you tonight. I hope that you find more freedom in your life through this process, that you find ways that contribute to your freedom and contribute to your primary purpose each and every day, and that you make the choice each and every day, just for today, be here and show up for you. Thank you. Good night.